Have you ever met a person who worked for government over 20 years and then started an agriculture farm in his 50s? Hi everyone, I am Tanya, your host for Safe Table podcast. Welcome to episode 3, where I have invited Brian, who is a CEO and founder of Myca Farms. Myca Farms grows beautiful variety of mushrooms. They sell lion's mane, pink oyster, blue, chestnut, and many other beautiful categories which I didn't see before in my life. So let's dive into conversation with Brian, where I'm going to ask him about his challenges with HACCP, food safety regulations, and how he is working with his customers. Hi Brian, how are you?
Hey, how you doing, Tanny? What's up?
I'm good, thank you. So, first of all, thank you so much for accepting my invite to be on the Safe Table podcast, episode number 3. How is Myca Farms doing?
Well, since we met you, we've onboarded with GFS and we've started rolling out with a couple of SKU items, and it's been pretty good. I mean, it's like any business. Still in the startup baby phase, but getting ourselves the licensing and the certification was our opened up all the doors for us as a manufacturer of gourmet mushrooms. Well, we're a farm basically, so yeah, it's been going good.
Brian, I was looking at your website and I was amazed to know. I think we didn't discuss this before that you had a background in mental health counseling. So
Yeah, I
how
worked for. What's that? Go ahead.
so how did your background with mental health counseling inspired you to start Myca Farm? So how what was your inspiration behind that?
Yeah, I've always had an affinity towards the idea of growing food locally. I was a part of a nonprofit farm for a little while. Working with people on mental health and disabilities, they're really restricted to how much money they get. Some of the clients I worked with that were accessing our services were, quite severely disabled through schizophrenia and other psychiatric diagnosis, even some with addictions as well. But primarily, there was something going on like Asperger's and some serious attention deficits and things where people like that just they can't function in normal society. They wouldn't be able to handle a job like yourself or I. So when I worked with them, I noticed that there was such a demand for cheap food, and not just like the garbage crap cornflakes and like sugar cereal. Typically, most of them were eating that stuff all the time because it's cheap and easy, and a lot of them didn't know how to prepare their food. So I started a couple community kitchens as part of my job, and we did a food bank for a lot of people on disabilities, and we ended up with a lot of refugees there as well and new Canadians. And what we would do is we'd get together and I'd show them how to prepare things like lentils. Like, a lot of these folks have no idea how to cook a lentil if it's dried. So these types of things were happening. So I started searching out places like God's Green Acre and a couple of nonprofit farms through my time. And I thought how cool would it be to actually be a farmer one day, to actually, grow food for Canadians in my neighborhood and people in my neighborhood and give them crazy good prices. And even I donate lots of my mushrooms to the Salvation Army still as well, where I started my career as mental health addiction. So for me, it came out of like providing a basic need, not just like, because, yeah, you go to the grocery store, we've got tons of imported produce, a lot of great stuff, and we have local growers as well. It's all kind of commercial industrial scale. So my job was to, figure out how to source that and get it to people. So it was kind of the basis of my inspiration. Plus, I just didn't want to really work in the government anymore. I did 20 years, and there was a lot of overdose. When the fentanyl crisis hit Vancouver, it was I lost something like 30. I think it was like 32 clients in 1 year from tainted drugs, right? And the thing about fentanyl is it's all bang for the buck. It's really dirt cheap, and the dealers were selling it because it's so cheap to get, and they were ordering it online. So you could literally order it online, have it shipped in, and you got Johnny on the spot trying to make money, and everyone dying around him. So I just got so tired and burnt out. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to make a go at it, and I started the farm.
Wow, your journey, your mission is just this touched my heart. I didn't know about this before. So you didn't have background in food safety. You started your mushroom farm and you're selling to, I think, a lot of good restaurants and
Mm-hmm.
I mean big restaurants and retail stores. So what food safety hazards are associated with mushrooms and how did you mitigate those? Because you don't have a background in food safety.
No, well, and that's where you came in. Actually, that was your service that saved the day in a lot of ways. It was Kirk. my friend Kirk started a kefir business, and he started Kirk's Kefir. And I remember talking to him at a friend's house, and we were getting along, talking about his business, and he was really excited about me starting the mushroom company. And I said, well, I mean, we're at that place where like mushroom farming is definitely the type of mushrooms we grow are not as hazardous as a button mushroom farm. Actually, button mushroom farming is way more hazardous because you're dealing with manure and a real chance of salmonella contamination. So with ours, our ingredients are oats, organically sourced oats, and hardwood sawdust from Vancouver Island. So we have very little, excuse me, contaminant products. It's like there's not a lot for us like any salmonella. So what we had to navigate was what do we fall under, what category, and then it was what kind of insurance do we need, and then yeah, like our food handling, preparing, and those were all the little steps that we really needed to implement into our system, and that's a daunting task and a huge job of its own. So that's where like when Kirk mentioned your services and I called you and you guys came, I've instantly felt relief. I instantly felt, okay, there is light at the end of this tunnel. Because me even being a social worker, I was used to paperwork, but it's a whole different vocabulary. It's a whole different, criteria to meet to get into it. So it was such a relief to have help, and it was worth it. Yeah.
Thank you. So, how did HACCP plan improved your operation? So, what difference do you see in people, in the mushroom itself, or anything related to before and after you got your HACCP certification?
Well, with getting the HACCP certification, we found that it was good to have a protocol in place for cleaning and washing. I did an online HACCP, but it wasn't as much as like implementing it like how we did with your services. So things changed. I noticed that it really pushed us as a farm to make a hand washing station, make a better make a production room, make categorizing and separating all the different processes of harvesting and processing the mushroom before we chop it up and put it into a box. Being one for us is we weren't putting it in wrapping it in cellophane. Where if you're wrapping a mushroom in cellophane, that's a little bit of a different licensing. So for us, being a fresh mushroom in an open basket is a little different as opposed to like if we were going to do this, right? Yeah, I mean, I noticed that I like the way things are running now. I like how people are mindful more of their hygiene and all that kind of stuff. So it helped us whip things into shape for sure. So I feel it's good to actually have tracking and tracing and all that stuff. So yeah.
So, how are you managing the traceability? Because you have different types of beautiful mushrooms. I remember when I visited, we have
Hmm.
always seen those button mushrooms that you mentioned, or even shiitake mushrooms, right? But you have
Right.
pink, blue, lion's mane, chestnut, all those beautiful
Hmm.
varieties that I had never seen before. I
Right.
was really amazed, and those colors. So, how do you manage the traceability for all those different types of mushroom that you have?
Well, well, the thing that we found out was pretty sweet is that they all grow in the same method. They're all growing in the same medium, and they're just different species that eat hardwood. So it's very much kind of the same. We kind of scored on that because every mushroom is very specific to what it takes to grow it. So we're just looking at hardwood, soy hull, and oat husk. That's our ingredients, right? So having all the varieties of mushroom, it's no different for each one. So that was kind of nice that way. And yeah, so traceability is more about from the time of harvest to the container to the box and out the door. And so we're using the system we implemented with you with the HACCP. And we're doing all of our shipping and our records, and we have our codes. GFS was waiting for this stuff for us to get on board with them. And so when we did it, we kind of pulled off that little. A lot of those companies, like when you say you're starting a farm, a lot of people do not have faith. British Columbia is pretty hard to do a startup farm and actually make money. Um, we're still in the place where our operations in our first year is still balancing out for us. So we're breaking even. I'm not taking a salary at all. I'm still living on the, whatever I can and some credit to keep my business going. So all these little steps along the way to get us like, because our next step is just scalability, right? So this is having the HACCP is letting me scale and find more customers that want a certification and a license. And we're not going to be that farm that like There's a lot of other farms, not going to say who, that do this once and then never stop. Like they never recertify, but they're still selling product to the same people,
Oh,
right? So,
wow.
so there's a bit of a culture of like this costs a lot of money. The bureaucracy of it all, they just go buying whatever. So, the food industry's got its own, in accountability in some ways, but I like to know that we have accountability and that we have integrity so that, in a year's time, we have our recertification. When Cisco's knocking at our door, we're right there. We're like, yep, here's our new certification, here's our licensing. Because we want to be big. We want to go big. I have to. Scalability is the only way this farm's going to survive, unless it was just me and a few people buying my mushrooms, right? Because they are artisanal. Yeah.
Yeah, and I truly believe that, Brian, HACCP, or if you go for any other certification in the future, if you're planning to go whole foods, save on foods, and even if you target your US market in the future, or you want
Mm-hmm.
to sell outside of British Columbia, these certifications are definitely that you need in place. That, like, this is what my experience, and also not just to sell on a bigger retail stores.
Mm-hmm.
I personally believe, as the way you said it, that it's important to implement all those food safety
Yeah.
practices, because at the end, if something happens, it's your product, it's your company, so you are
Yep.
responsible for all of it, right? No store is going to take responsibility for your product, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
at the end, it's your responsibility. So I think having all those practices in place, it really helps you build your trust with your customer.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And I mean that's what gives our customer peace of mind, the chefs a peace of mind. And like I said, it's one of the things I do appreciate Canada is that we have these accreditations, so let's we know where our food's coming from. We know how it's been handled, and it is important, right? I find it very important. If someone comes to my farm, I can tell them we're licensed, and I've had people ask me that too, right? Are you certified? Are you licensed? And I'm like, yep.
Yeah.
And then so it will help us as a corporation to build more relationships. And then our next step is to basically add value to our mushrooms. So when I have surplus, we're going to pickle it, we're going to process it. So that'll be our next phase. So if we already have a HACCP in place, getting our food processing license won't be as hard. We'll have the space to do it. So we're already
That's
sort of there. It's like a good start to the next phase. And when I go to the bank to borrow money and say like, hey, I want this machine that can help me, chop mushrooms or do this. They're going to ask me about that certifications, right? So
right. That's true. That's completely true.
yeah,
When we talk about customer, you have that little board outside of the farm says we mushrooms are ready. You can come anytime and pick it up, right? You
yeah.
have that. So if I'm a customer, I'm entering in. How do you communicate the food safety practices to those consumers?
Don't have them come in anymore. So what we've
Okay.
done is set up an outside pickup window. So we have an actual fridge outside, and it's a clear fridge on the front, and then the customer's name's on the box. And so we have that little entranceway. We've converted it into a pickup booth. So it's like a little booth. You walk in, and there's the fridge, your name's on it. You open up the fridge and you grab your mushrooms and out you go. So it's just like any farm market where you come and like say you order eggs and your eggs are sitting in a fridge, just like a grocery store. So it's very much like a grocery store fridge, and everything is separate in its own containers, separated for just the customer. So
Oh,
that's how
wow.
we took care of that because we don't have customers in the building anymore at all.
Right. That's
Yeah,
really smart. Yeah,
yeah.
that's really a cool idea to have a little window and then they can just
That's
pick
right.
the product
Yeah, and
and
they just pick it up and they can pre-order and just walk in and open like they don't come in the building. They just go into the little undercover area and open the fridge and they can get their product. Makes it
wow.
easy too because they can come at 6 at night or 7 o'clock at night. It's any time. If someone wants to come steal mushrooms, cool, go ahead. About if like 2 boxes of mushrooms are gone and no one paid for them, I don't really care at that point, right? So if they came all the way to the farm, then they can have the mushroom.
It was last year,
Yeah,
October 2023, when we did your HAS up. Do you
yeah,
remember any particular challenge that you were like, okay, why I have to do this? It's a lot for a farm to do.
yeah. There
Any
was a
particular
lot to.
challenge that really feel like why it's a requirement even? Anything that was, uh, I mean, any particular challenge that you were not happy with?
Well, I think it's for being brand new entrepreneur farmer. It's anything like that's a bit of a daunting task. I don't. Some of it's kind of crazy. When we did get our final inspection, I think he found a door open and one crate on the floor and some other things. So it was a really grasping at straws after we've had everything, and we've maintained the facility the exact same way. But it's just the overwhelming paperwork. It's the paperwork. I like the amount of forms and the amount of types of forms, the style of forms, all of that stuff for me would have been a full-time job for a couple months, at that point. And that's when Steven, my manager, came in and he worked with you so diligently to get through it. Because as a business owner, it's more important for me to well, you saw what I was doing. We were fixing equipment. We always had issues with staff. I had crop failure. Like being a farmer, there's so many moving parts. To say that I got to fill out all this paperwork now just to sell mushrooms makes it kind of overwhelming, right? It's like, oh well, we can't take this huge, like the Cactus Club's waiting. We're waiting for these big amounts of orders to come in, and we can't do anything until you have a HACCP, right? So that's a lot of anxiety creating right there. I was pretty stressed out about it. Didn't know what I was going to do. So that's where, you got to hire people to do it, but we're on a shoestring budget. So, I basically financed this company, and I'm going, well, I can always go back to my government job, right? So, but it creates a lot of anxiety, some stress for sure to have to manage operations of a farm and then try and make all the time I would need for paperwork. It's just too much. Can't do it, you know?
So understanding that paperwork was overwhelming, and but after getting HACCP, you were able to sell at the stores or the restaurants that you were
Mm-hmm.
planning to, right? So do you suggest other food businesses or other farms to take the HACCP who are starting as a startup as well, to take HACCP at the beginning of their business or any other certification?
Yeah, I think that if you're going scale like I am, like when like we're big picture, like because a lot of the restaurants I sold to don't care. They just want it farm fresh. There's a lot of farms I know there that don't even do this work. They don't want to spend the money or the time. But they're at the mercy of just a couple of purchasers. Whereas if I was like a smaller farm and I had like just the farmers markets, if I just did farmers markets and a couple of restaurants and I had myself and one helper, I wouldn't need it, right? But the fact that we're scaling and I had an order for such a significant amount of product, and then with me, my goals and my vision as a business is not to just be a small farm. Like we want to expand, we want to grow. I want to make Myca Farms North American eventually in 10 years. Like I want to see this farm in Calgary next year or 3 years from now. So we're going to work with our food brokers and our food buyers. And I'm an industry guy. I want to be in the industry. So if I want to be in the industry, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of stress, and it's a big investment and a huge risk. So I needed to do this to get further to the next step. There's a lot of farmers I know that won't do it because it's one person, two or three staff, and they sell to like Champs mushrooms, right? They sell at a crazy wholesale price, and then half of my competitors import their grow bags from China, so they don't actually make the bag like I do. The only people that grow their own mushrooms, start to finish, are the button mushroom industry, but they don't make their own grain spawn. All their grain spawn comes from California. So Canada's mushroom industry is based heavily on importing grain, like mycelium, importing grow bags, and then the funny thing is that they can grow it here out of a grow bag manufactured in Asia and say it's Canadian grown. So there's a lot of loopholes that they play. So they're not interested, right? The bigger ones will stay interested because they need to get into the Costco's and the Save On Foods and all that sort of stuff. But all the underneath guys that sell, like there's sub farms that sell to the other corporation. So let's say I have my HACCP license now. So I could go out and farm out other farmers and buy their product and put it under my license, right? And that's what happens. That's what happens because it's a lot of clandestine farming for some cash money here and there, and that's cool. But it's a difference of whether the farmer wants to be small or wants to get into the game and wants to be a broker and all that sort of stuff. So if you're thinking about it, it's worth it, right? Because I want to do Cisco next. I want to have all those big food buyers do it, and the first thing they want to know is our insurance and our HACCP. Like, who are we licensed under? And when I show them, they're happy. They're so happy because they're like, "Oh, good, you've got it. Now I can shop for food brokers, right?" So all those food brokers in Produce Alley, when they send me their form to buy my stuff and we negotiate pricing, having my HACCP is essential. I have to have that. It puts me in the game as a real competitor, and that's it, right? So if you don't want to be a competitor and you want a hobby farm, cool. But if you want to be a competitor, and you want to produce and you want to actually make a career out of farming, that's what you got to do. It's the only way.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that, Brian.
Yeah, you bet.
If you if you had today to hire someone full time as a
Mhm.
QA or QC, do the lab, the lab work that you have,
Yeah.
or all the paperwork. So, what qualities would you look into that person?
Well, the guys I've fired a lot of staff in the beginning that started, and I let them go. It just wasn't working out, and I found people passionate about mushrooms and passionate about hard work. Um, I don't necessarily uh, I don't need someone to know everything about a mushroom. What I need someone is with a positive attitude and likes to work. Um, Typically, in the old days, I'm a Generation X. I'm 52 this summer, and if you wanted a job, you showed up and you worked really hard. And if the boss asked you a question to do something, you just did it, right? And with a good attitude and really hard work, that's all I want. I can teach you how to do it. I can teach you how to do this. But if you can't do physical work, or you're too busy staring at your phone, or you don't feel like coming into work today because you're just kind of not feeling it, you just phone in. And a lot of the local people I've hired, um, they don't have to work. I mean, they come from families with money, and
Right.
they'd rather stay home. I have staff that were like more interested in going home, living in their parents' basement until they're 28, and not really challenging themselves, right? So I want people that want to like do something, like that, like work, want to do it. Start, and I had one staff come and he was expecting top wages at the beginning of it, and I'm like, well, no, that's not how it works. Or they think you're going to hire them right away, and then as soon as they get comfortable, they stop really focusing on stuff. And the thing about farming is that you one screw up and you destroy crop. You can ruin thousands of dollars of product with one mistake. So I need people that can think, listen, follow directions, and actually have a good, like, want to work. And having a job isn't just like taking some pride in it. So I found a great team. They've got us to the next level. I spoil them. I'm buying dirt bikes for my staff, and we can all go ride on days off. We're gonna go wakeboarding as a staff. So I believe my team, right? I want a team. I want to give my staff members a share of the company as we go, right? I'm building a community, and I'm building a community-based business. I don't. I want people that are into it, right? If you're not into mushrooms, or if you don't think this is cool, then it won't work for you, right? Like it's like why I'm not. It's why I'm not trying to be a paper worker. I don't want to. I don't want. I hate paper. Like doing paperwork. That's why I hired you, Tanny. Right? Like that's why I hired you, Tanny. It's like I hate paperwork. I did it for 20 years for the government, and I still sucked at it then, and I suck at it now. Right? But when it comes to selling mushrooms and hustling, that's what I like to do. Right?
Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing, Brian. One last question.
Sure.
Where can people buy your mushrooms?
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, and are you working on any new categories?
Well, as far as species of mushroom,
Yeah.
well, we still have our huge umbrella of mushrooms. So I work with chefs as they want different stuff, right? Where you can find us now is we are actually stopped doing the farmers markets for a while because we're not making enough money at the farmers markets. It's a lot of effort, a lot of hustle, and you're barely making ends. So we've gone full scale into wholesale production. So now we're at Cactus Clubs. We're at a bunch of restaurants. Gordon Foods, you can find us. We're opening up Cisco in a couple of weeks, so we can get into all the service for all the food services for now. We're deciding what grocery chain, but we're not ready for surplus yet for groceries. That'll be our next goal. It's going to be the brand name in the grocery store. And then we're going to start putting into some other cool products with mushrooms. I'm not going to tell right now, but we'll have some surprises as we go to diversify as a business. It's Myca Farms, not Myca Mushrooms. Myca Farms is going to produce some really cool food and food products coming out. But yeah, you'll find us at the farm. Come by 6475 264th Street. We have the pickup market right there. We are going to do a few farmers markets as we stretch out, but that's going to be done by my staff. One of the perks about working for Myca Farms now is you can have your day job, but if you want to make that extra couple $100 on a weekend, or split the cash with the business, we run out there, and my staff are going to run the farmers markets. So you can work Monday to Friday, take that one extra Saturday to go make some extra pocket money, right? So there's those other cash perks with the job, right? So you can go out and I'll pay you way more an hour to stand at the farmer's market than you do making grow bags, right? a wage for me would be like 22.50 an hour. But then if you come to the farmers market, you can make 400, 500 cash that day, right? So there's always ways to help make my staff enjoy their job and do it. But selling isn't easy. You got to hustle. You got to work it. You got to show people what you got, right? So that's where it's at. That's where we're at right now.
That's what I love sales too. I am not from a sales background, but since I started this business, it's about selling too, right? You have to
That's
keep
right.
selling your services. So I
Yeah.
think I started falling in love into sales too.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Brian. I'm
Thank you.
amazed with your mission, your vision, and I wish all the best
You
for
too.
all your future planning. I hope Myca Farms grow in North America.
Well, thank you so much. You helped us out a lot. All right. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Safe Table podcast. I hope you have enjoyed Myca Farms' food safety journey and their commitment to HACCP. If you have found this conversation insightful, please like, comment, and share. And if you haven't subscribed us, do it now because we don't want you to miss another episode. Until then, bon appetit!